And he's great to work with. I've known him for 2 years now. When we first met, we clicked, and one of the songs we did was One in a Million. We just clicked, and we had a great chemistry.
Following the runaway success and the controversy generated by her debut album, Aaliyah shied away from the spotlight for a while. She concentrated mainly on her school studies during 1995, surfacing most publicly as a model for Tommy Hilfiger in a nationwide Billboard campaign. She also appeared in the notorious B.I.G.'s One More Chance video and worked with his Junior Mafia crew, reconnecting her with her Bedford Stuyvesant roots. Her only soul musical appearance was the track Are You Ready from the film soundtrack Sunset Park. In her absence, other black teen artists like Brandy and Monica appeared to fill the space she'd created, mixing wholesome good looks and church-going Sweet 16 innocence with street sass and a hint of budding sexuality. Their music and image was taken directly from Aaliyah's own mould: a little bit soul, a little bit rap, and a whole lot more pop. But as ever, Aaliyah was one step ahead, and her second LP would find her going in a whole other direction. With hindsight, it's easy to see what made One in a Million so successful, but at the time it wasn't so clear. In 1996, Timbaland and Missy Misdemeanor Elliott were relative unknowns. The former an untested DJ and producer, the latter an off-the-wall rapper best known for her wacky guest appearances on other people's records. When Aaliyah and Barry Hankerson hired them to produce and write songs for the singer's next album, they knew they were taking a risk. But they wanted to prove that there was more to Aaliyah than just R. Kelly. Indeed, following the controversy of their marriage, Aaliyah and Blackground had been dropped by Jive, so the two singers weren't even on the same label anymore. There was no point in working with another big-name producer, as then Aaliyah would still be seen as a puppet, being passed from one set of hands to another. No, they wanted to do something different. They wanted Aaliyah to establish her own identity. One in a Million certainly did that, though in the end only half the tracks on the album were produced by Timbaland. Jermaine Dupri was brought in as a concession to Aaliyah's new record label Atlantic, who pleaded for a more experienced hand at the tiller, and Naughty by Nature's KG produced standout track A Girl Like You, which also featured treats from the same group. The album ranged from the up-tempo urban groove of Beats for the Streets to the epic ballad Never Given Up. Her vocals on the album earned comparisons with Minnie Riperton and Janet Jackson, but Timbaland's jazzy, skittering beats and minimalist production gave the record a futuristic, almost science fiction sheen. Timbaland and Aaliyah had struck up a close creative working relationship in the studio, experimenting with different sounds and techniques. Aaliyah had total trust in Timbaland, and in turn knew that if he had a crazy idea for a track, something no one else would go for, she'd always give it a try. Missy Elliott too became good friends with Aaliyah, writing lyrics for her to sing that took unexpected twists and turns and allowed her to empathise with a female perspective, rather than have older men putting words into her mouth. Elliott was very conscious of Aaliyah's youth when writing for her, soon nicknaming her Baby Girl and being careful not to have her sing anything too lewd or suggestive. The first fruit of the collaboration was the single If Your Girl Only Knew. Over a swaggering, almost threatening bass line, Aaliyah comes across as a strong, independent woman who refuses to let a guy come on to her because she knows that he already has a girlfriend. The track was another R&B number one and was followed up the charts by Four-Page Letter, Hot Like Fire, The One I Gave My Heart To, and the LP's title track. The album also included Choosy Lover, another old Isley Brothers song, and a version of Marvin Gaye's Got to Give It Up, featuring rapper Slick Rick. Old school soul meets new school R&B flavour at its finest, reckoned Blackbeat magazine. One in a Million not only effectively launched the careers of Timbaland and Missy Elliott, thus redefining the sound of 90s R&B and rap, but it cast off the spectre of R. Kelly forever, and proved that Aaliyah was not a one-trick pony. It seemed now that she could turn her hand to anything, and that's exactly what she did.
I play a fantastical creature in Queen of the Damned. I play a vampire, and not just any vampire. I'm playing the queen of all vampires. She's the mother. She's 4,000 centuries old. So there was a lot that I had to do to really find Akasha, and I took 2 months of preparation for that. She had to have an accent. I had to do wire work because she flew, so there was a lot that went into bringing Akasha to life.
Aaliyah's first film role was in the low-key comedy A Low Down Dirty Shame in 1994, in which she essentially appeared as herself, singing the song The Thing I Like. She had also made herself a distinctive small-screen presence through her often groundbreaking videos. She intended her clips to stand out among other female R&B singers on MTV, and she found an ideal collaborator in young up-and-coming director Paul Hunter. Their work together was softly surreal and expressionistic, a wash of colour and light, striking, erotic and strange. While other music videos are brash and in your face, Aaliyah's were languid, relaxed yet unsettling at the same time. Aaliyah, however, had ambitions that went beyond video. She wanted to act in films. Her first ventures into cinema were musical, contributing songs to soundtracks, most notably Journey to the Past from the animated film Anastasia, which was nominated for an Oscar for Best Original Song from a Motion Picture in 1998. Unfortunately, that was the year that Titanic swept the boards and Aaliyah was beaten in her category by Celine Dion with My Heart Will Go On. She did, however, get to perform her song at the ceremony, which was broadcast live on television to 1 million people, as well as to a live audience including the cream of Hollywood players and legends. For Aaliyah, it was a glimpse of another world. A world that she, along with all her fellow students at the Detroit High School for the Fine and Performing Arts, had always wanted to break into. She had graduated the previous year, and her former principal, watching the awards at home, burst into tears on seeing Aaliyah perform her number. She had truly made it. Yet for Aaliyah, the Oscars only showed her how much further she could go. At the ceremony, she was mixing with the real stars, Madonna, Jack Nicholson and so on. The following year, Aaliyah had another soundtrack hit with Are You That Somebody from Eddie Murphy's Dr. Dolittle. But the desire to actually step in front of the camera remained. In 2000, she finally got her wish, starring in the action thriller Romeo Must Die alongside martial arts expert Jet Li. Aaliyah played Trish O'Day, the daughter of a gangster boss who rebels by becoming a hotshot lawyer and working against him. In the film's most memorable moment, Jet Li uses Aaliyah's body as a human weapon in an impressively choreographed fight scene. Aaliyah had studied Kung Fu when she was 8 and performed all her own stunts. The film was a box office hit and received good reviews, with Aaliyah coming in for praise for her emotional scenes as well as the action ones. At one point, she's required to cry real tears. She took the role seriously, studying acting with Harold Guskin, one of Hollywood's most respected coaches, who trained her up with a repertoire of Shakespeare, Chekhov and Tennessee Williams. Aaliyah also executive produced the soundtrack, as well as contributing 4 songs, 3 of which became hit singles. Besides Are You Feeling Me, there was I Don't Wanna and Come Back in One Piece, featuring DMX, both of which went top 10, and Try Again, which was the first single in history to go to number 1 on the strength of radio play alone. The soundtrack album, also featuring artists who had become personal friends of Aaliyah's, such as Destiny's Child, Timbaland and Genuine, sold over 1 million copies, while the film grossed over $58 million. Suddenly, Aaliyah was someone that Hollywood could take seriously.
We used 5 pythons in the shoot, and at first I was a little nervous, but then once I started to handle them, I totally fell in love with them and felt I had somewhat of an affinity towards them. I mean, they're very mysterious creatures. They live in solitude. They're dangerous, yet at the same time, they're quite beautiful. And I thought that it would be an animal that could represent me on this album.
Having left Jive following the rumours of her underage marriage to R. Kelly, Aaliyah now found herself in a similarly turbulent relationship with her new label Atlantic. There were personality clashes, although it has to be said that none of these involved Aaliyah herself. She was widely regarded as one of the warmest, most pleasant and down-to-earth people in the business. Barry Hankerson, however, her uncle and manager, seemed to have a gift for rubbing some people up the wrong way. Like any good manager, he put the interests of his client first, and when that client also happened to be family, he could be doubly ruthless. Both he and Aaliyah were impressed with Virgin America's handling of the Romeo Must Die soundtrack, and felt that Atlantic had failed to make a similar effort in promoting Aaliyah's own album. 1 in a Million, while it would later be critically acclaimed as a groundbreaking work, had not initially sold as well as Aaliyah's debut. It had proved that the singer was more than a teen flash in the pan, that she could stand on her own feet, and it had shifted a respectable number of units. But Hankerson was convinced that Aaliyah was capable of so much more, with the right record company behind her. In 2000, Blackground Enterprises and its whole roster of artists, which of course included Aaliyah, upped sticks yet again and moved to another parent company, from Atlantic to Virgin America. Atlantic were somewhat sour, as Aaliyah had already begun recording her third album for them, and now Virgin were going to get the finished product. In other respects, however, they weren't sorry to see either Blackground or Hankerson go. An Atlantic executive even said he felt sorry for Hankerson's future label mates at Virgin, who'd now have to deal with him. At the 2000 MTV Music Video Awards, Aaliyah won Best Video from a Film and Best Female Video for Try Again. She dedicated the award to her grandfather and the memory of her grandmother after flying in especially for the event from Australia, where she was busy recording her new album and filming The Queen of the Damned. Yet, as 2001 began, there was still no sign of a new record from Aaliyah. Fans have been waiting nearly 5 years now for a follow-up to 1 in a Million. During this time, her unknown collaborators on that record, Timbaland and Missy Elliott, had become superstars, and the sound that they had created for her was everywhere. Once more, the pressure was on. Could Aaliyah step back into the fray and reclaim what was hers? Or would she have moved on to the next level, revolutionising soul and hip-hop for a third time? The world finally got a chance to learn when Aaliyah's new single, We Need a Resolution, was released in April 2001. Produced by Timbaland, who also delivered a rap in the song's middle section, it was written by Static, the man behind her last 2 #1 hits, Are You That Somebody and Try Again. This dark, relatively aggressive comeback confounded some listeners, especially when it was accompanied by a bizarre video in which Aaliyah writhed around with live snakes all over her body, smeared herself with mud, levitated while wearing headphones, and wandered around in a gothic, futuristic lair more suited to Marilyn Manson than our favourite clean-cut girl next door. If the single was disturbing, failing even to penetrate the top 40, then the album released shortly after received a much more positive response. Going straight into the charts at number 2, it sold over 200,000 copies in its first week of release. Mellow and Sultry, the LP titled simply Aaliyah, showed a singer who had matured both as an artist and as a woman. This wasn't about the production, though Timbaland and Missy Elliott were both present and correct once again. This was about the person whose name was in the title. Aaliyah had lived a little, and now had the experience to breathe real emotion into epic ballads like Never No More and the voluptuous, powerful More Than a Woman. Other highlights included the Missy-penned Quiet Storm, I Care For You, and the dance floor raver You Got the Nerve. Then there was Rock the Boat, a classy club pop crossover tune that was earmarked as the album's next single. Aaliyah had truly come into her own, and if it took the public a while to get used to the fact that their R&B sweetheart was now a complex, full-blooded adult artist, then they would eventually find the rewards of her new work all the more satisfying. But tragically, Aaliyah would not be around to reap the benefits.
The movies actually prolonged the album. I started working on this third album before I did Romeo, but then when that project came up, I took a break from it to do Romeo Must Die and then to do that soundtrack. I took a conscious break before, starting to record because I wanted to take a break for myself to rejuvenate and just get my creative juices flowing and to feel like I could give my audience my best. So when I did Queen of the Dam, I decided to record the album at the same time.
Many were surprised when Aaliyah was cast as Akasha, a 6,000-year-old vampire goddess in the film The Queen of the Damned. Others, including the movie's director, thought that she was the perfect choice. Michael Reimer wanted someone who could project an aura of dark and dangerous sexuality, who could be amoral, all-powerful, mysterious and extremely charismatic. He had seen Aaliyah's videos on MTV, and she seemed to have just the image he was looking for. But could a teenage soul singer cut it in the gothic fantasy world of author Anne Rice, upon whose cult novels the film was based? Her fans were known for their obsessiveness over the details of the books. If Reimer didn't get it right, he would face the unforgiving wrath of his core audience. Queen of the Damned was the second film adaptation of an Anne Rice book, following on from 1995's Interview with a Vampire, starring Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, which had been a hit both at the box office and with the fans. Reimer was working on a much tighter budget than his predecessors, and his cast were all relatively unknown. Irish actor Stuart Townsend stepped into Tom Cruise's shoes as the vampire Lestat, who in the new film has reinvented himself as a rock star, and whose stadium-filling brand of goth metal, written and performed for the movie by Marilyn Manson and Korn, awakens the queen of all vampires, Akasha, from her centuries-old slumber. After seeing her videos, Reimer received further recommendation for casting Aaliyah as Akasha from the actor Willem Dafoe. Dafoe's son was a huge fan of the singer, and Dafoe himself had also been won over by her abilities. Accordingly, Reimer met with Aaliyah in Los Angeles, where she was accompanied as ever by her parents and brothers. Reimer said that he found the whole family unnerving for the calm, even-tempered way they dealt with everything, displaying the sort of serenity usually only found in religious cults. Reimer told Aaliyah that this was a very demanding role and that it could ruin her career if she wasn't up to it. Playing a vampire would be very different from the part she had in Romeo Must Die, as a feisty, independent human woman very much like herself. At her audition, she was asked to read a 10-page speech from Oscar Wilde's play Salome, an incredibly challenging piece, but Aaliyah was more than up to it. She used her training as a singer and a dancer to find the rhythm in the words, to act them out, to use her body, to exhibit a sexual feline energy. It was exciting, Reimer remembers. For Aaliyah, the part was a chance for her to get in touch with her dark side. "I've always been mysterious," she told Vibe magazine. "I think I'm a bit of a vampire in real life, and there are times when I just want to be myself. I want to be alone." Akasha was an Egyptian goddess, so the part also allowed Aaliyah to indulge her fascination with Egyptian culture, and to add to the collection of Egyptian artefacts that littered her apartment. According to the cast and crew, Aaliyah took filming in her stride, despite the fact that she was recording her new album at the same time. She was getting up at 4 a.m. for her makeup call, filming all day and then working on her album till midnight. Aaliyah even overcame her famous shyness to film a love scene with Stuart Townsend, in which both actors make out in a hot tub full of roses, which ends with Aaliyah sucking blood from Townsend's chest. However, despite being featured heavily on posters and in trailers for the film, fans were disappointed to find that Aaliyah had surprisingly little screen time in the finished film. Akasha doesn't even appear until halfway through, and in the end much of her dialogue isn't even her own. It was overdubbed by her brother Rashad in the wake of the singer's untimely death. For by the time Aaliyah brought the part of an undead vampire queen to vivid life, she herself had passed beyond the grave.
We just literally act a fool, and I love it. It's like being a kid. And sometimes you need that. Sometimes you need to just be pure silly.
Aaliyah was on Abaco, a tiny island in the Bahamas, to film the video for her new single, Rock the Boat. Work had begun in Miami on August the 22nd with some tricky underwater scenes, and a couple of days later the singer and her crew had flown the 200 miles down to Abaco to finish the shot. The video was being directed by Hype Williams, the talented young auteur responsible for Missy Elliott's super-duper fly, The Rain, and P. Diddy's Been Around the World. By Saturday, August the 25th, the shoot had been completed and the crew were due to return back to the States. But instead of contacting the Sky Limo charter company who had flown them down to the Bahamas and were due to pick them up again on Sunday, 8 of the crew, including Aaliyah, decided to go home early and used a small local company, Black Hawk International Airways. One reason why Aaliyah was in such a hurry to get back home may have been that she was missing her boyfriend, Rockefeller Records chairman Damon Dash. A millionaire music executive while still in his 20s, Dash had risen from the streets in partnership with his friend and Rockefeller's star act, the rapper Jay-Z. The pair had later expanded into a clothing line, earning even more money. He and Aaliyah had met earlier that year and were soon a hot item, although they kept their relationship under wraps and away from the media. But it was an open secret that the pair were planning to eventually marry. Aaliyah had told members of the crew how much she was missing Damon, and it certainly appears to have been her own choice to set off back early. However, she also had a heavy workload. The MTV Music Video Awards were coming up, she had to finish dubbing her dialogue for The Queen of the Damned, and begin shooting on the 2 Matrix sequels. The twin-engine Cessna 402B took off from Marsh Harbour Airport shortly after 6:30 p.m. On board were Aaliyah's 2 hairstylists, Anthony Dodd and Eric Foreman, makeup artist Christopher Maldonado, Blackground record executive Gina Smith, Virgin America's director of video production Douglas Kratz, Aaliyah, her chaperone Keith Wallace, and her bodyguard Scott Gallin. The pilot was Louis Morales III. Shortly after takeoff, the plane went into a nosedive at no more than 100 feet and crashed on the south end of the runway, bursting into flames. All those on board were killed. Firefighters who arrived at the scene of the crash reported that 3 men survived the initial impact, but that Aaliyah was among those killed instantly. One of the survivors was her bodyguard, Scott Gallin, who was still conscious as he was driven to hospital and kept asking if Aaliyah was all right. All 3 died soon afterwards. Witnesses said the airplane was smashed into several pieces, with bodies and wreckage still burning on the ground. The passengers appear to have been hurled from the plane on impact while still buckled into their seats. There was no chance of any survivors. Investigations have since determined that the probable cause of the crash was that the plane was overloaded. The pilot had been seen arguing with the passengers over the amount of luggage and equipment they were loading into the plane prior to takeoff, but they'd insisted it all had to come with them. It was later estimated that the plane was carrying 5,495 pounds worth of equipment, plus 9 people. Bearing in mind that the maximum safe load for such a plane is 6,300 pounds, and that Scott Gallin alone weighed 300 pounds, it was clear that the plane wasn't going to make it. The fact that Gallin was reportedly sat at the back of the plane, along with much of the luggage, probably didn't help either. The Federal Aviation Administration also later revealed that Black Hawk International Airways had been cited 4 times in the past 4 years, once for a safety violation, and that Louis Morales wasn't actually authorised to fly that plane. He had also pleaded guilty to possession of crack cocaine 12 days earlier and was facing the possibility of his pilot's licence being revoked. An autopsy found that his body contained traces of cocaine and alcohol, and crash investigators found that the plane itself had not been properly maintained. A month after the crash, the FAA inspector who had granted Morales his licence committed suicide, in what seemed an unending catalogue of tragedy and error. Both Aaliyah's parents and the families of the 2 hairstylists later filed multiple lawsuits over the crash, alleging, among other things, that Virgin Records had put profits before safety in using a cheap, disreputable plane company to ferry the crew back home. A year after her death, even Aaliyah's funeral bill was unpaid, with Virgin denying responsibility for costs after the people who had arranged for the funeral had left the company. Such sordid facts and dealings inevitably surface in the wake of such a catastrophe, when the worst has already happened. In the end, however, they pale into insignificance next to the devastating sense of loss felt by the families, friends and fans of those killed. Aaliyah was irreplaceable. Her death was sudden, unexpected and cruel, leaving so much potential unfulfilled, so many songs unsung, so many parts unplayed. Above all, there was a sense of injustice, that this shouldn't have happened. And the question, rather than how, was why. Why did this have to happen? It's a question that nobody can answer, just as nobody can take her place. Aaliyah was the one and only.
All artists, when we make music and we perform, our main goal is to touch someone and to reach them in one way or another.
Within days, the media were calling Aaliyah hip-hop's Lady Diana, and posters and billboards became impromptu memorials as fans covered them with scrawled messages of love, condolence and loss. The MTV Music Video Awards, where Aaliyah had been due to appear, were dedicated to her memory. Janet Jackson was the first to pay tribute, sharing a conversation that Aaliyah had had with her about her dead grandmother, before reading a poem that she'd received from a fan in Georgia, dealing with Aaliyah's death. Janet broke down on the poem's final line, "We haven't lost anyone. We gained an angel." Genuine, Timbaland and Missy Elliott took to the stage next, with Missy wearing a jacket that had Aaliyah's face painted on the back. They each spoke about what Aaliyah, who they knew as baby girl, meant to them. Aaliyah's brother, Rashad, then came up and read a short poem about his sister, before an interview with Aaliyah appeared on a huge video screen. "Everything is worth it," she said in the interview. "The hard work, the times when you're tired, the times when you're a bit sad, the good times when you're on stage performing in front of thousands of people. In the end, it's all worth it because it really makes me happy. And I wouldn't trade it for anything else in the world. I honestly wouldn't." Aaliyah died doing the thing that she loved, which is how her friends and her fans will remember her. As a warm-spirited, friendly, unpretentious young girl who nevertheless was driven by some inner fire. An artist who was talented, ambitious, and who had a vision. Her funeral was on August the 31st in New York City, when 10 horses transported Aaliyah's silver coffin in a glass-panelled and rose-bedecked carriage from the E. Campbell Funeral Home to St. Ignatius Loyola Roman Catholic Church, a short distance away. Over 1,000 fans gathered to watch the procession alongside stars like Usher, Busta Rhymes, Jay-Z, P. Diddy, Missy Elliott, Maya, Lil' Kim, Gladys Knight, Jet Li and Mike Tyson. At the end of the service, Aaliyah's mother released a single white dove into the air, to be followed by 21 more, one for each year of her daughter's life. Across town, meanwhile, at Cipriani's restaurant on 42nd Street, a public memorial was being held, with continuous loops of Aaliyah's videos, music and performances being played from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. By lunchtime, there was a line of people around the block queuing to get in. Aaliyah's family set up a memorial fund to their daughter to benefit breast cancer charities, and an Aaliyah Memorial Scholarship Fund was set up by Operation Get Down, a community organisation founded by Barry Hankerson in the early 1970s. Aaliyah had performed at Operation Get Down events from the age of 5, and her parents had always been closely involved. The fund would provide financial assistance to 4 students a year at Aaliyah's old alma mater, the Detroit High School for the Fine and Performing Arts. The week after her death, Aaliyah's final album went to #1 on the charts, while her previous 2 also re-entered the hit parade. Aaliyah's last recorded track was the Timbaland song I Am Music, on which she was due to have worked with Beck. She was also hoping to collaborate with Trent Reznor of 9 Inch Nails, in a move that would have come totally from left field. Truly, no one can say what Aaliyah might have done had she lived. As so many said on her passing, she was an angel, one in a million. Rest in peace, baby girl.
Thanks for buying Maximum Aaliyah. We hope you enjoyed it. Watch out for further titles on Chrome Dreams coming up soon. If you did enjoy it or have any comments or suggestions, write to us at Chrome Dreams, PO Box 230, New Malden, Surrey, UK, KT36YY, or email on mail@chromedreams.co.uk. Details of our full catalogue are listed on our website at www.chromedreams.co.uk. Thanks again for listening, and goodbye for now.